Welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
Welcome, everyone, to the P.A.S. Report podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano. I'm glad you could join me. Make sure that you follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com, and share this episode with your family and friends and on social media, because we see this increasing authoritarianism within our government, the abuses of power when it comes to the government bureaucracy and government overreach. And I figured I'd bring on a great guest. He's been on before. I got George Hill, former FBI Supervisory Intelligence Analyst, joining me today. George, how are you?
I'm great, Nick. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, I always love to pick your brain, especially when we get stories breaking. So I wanted to bring you on. Just the news recently reported a week or so ago how the FBI is manipulating background investigations essentially to purge their ranks of conservatives, get conservatives out of the bureaucracy, people that subscribe to any type of Republican or conservative ideology. And I wanted to get your thoughts on what's going on there.
Everyone keeps on looking for the smoking gun. They're looking for that email, that memo, that directive that says, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. The FBI, for over 100 years has learned from working with criminals how not to get caught. So even in my own role, there would be instances where I would get, a phone call or a text message saying, hey, come talk to me. Let's not send an email. Let's not create something that's discoverable. And I want to start off with a really quick story that I think will lay the foundation for what we're about to talk. In 2016, I was at the FBI Academy as a field counselor, and we had an opportunity to have a private luncheon with Director Comey and his entourage, the other field counselor. So it was a private dining room off the main dining floor of the FBI Academy cafeteria. And at the time, the FBI was having a hard time retaining intelligence analysts. And the ones that were being retained were petulant, entitled, very hard to deal with. This is from my community, the supervisory intelligence community. And I framed my question to Director Comey within what I just said to you. And I said, asked that almost after almost 20 years of war, we have thousands of seasoned intelligence professionals that have served overseas, most of whom do not have college degrees. Director Comey, would you consider maybe laying out a pathway of hiring these people and then setting milestones? So if you get your associate's degree, you can get like your GS-11. If you get your bachelor's degree, your GS-12 or 13, whatever. And that would address the retention problem, while at the same time, we would be bringing in a cadre of workers who are used to working in a team environment that under pressure, and we would solve, the issues that my community has raised. He never got a chance to respond to me because his entourage, his posse, ripped me to shreds like a group of starving jackals and insisted that hiring from Ivy League and Ivy League adjacent schools was the way the Bureau is going to continue hiring. So that was almost 10 years ago, but it started well before that. So we see what kind of students are coming out of these institutions, and because it became evidence during the Hamas protest on campus. So they've been working at this for over 20 years, bringing in people that are ideologically bent, not mission-oriented, and are more process-oriented. So that was my first real exposure that veterans are not welcome at the Bureau.
And I think I want to say, I think that's important, because being mission-oriented, I remember when I was in emergency management and homeland security in New York State, the Cuomo administration was ultimately in charge. So my conservative ideology was irrelevant to me. It's what is our mission? What's our function? What are we going to do? Despite how I may think on the outside of politics and political issues, it was completely irrelevant. Now you bring this ideological mindset. And I think there's something really important that you said, that when you deal with the FBI, they know how to evade things, right? I mean, if you ever listen to the testimony of any high-ranking FBI official, any government official for that matter, it's always, I don't recall, I don't remember it that way. They understand the verbiage that they need to use to give themselves cover, and it's become a real problem within government. And then when you say that they said, well, let's talk about this in person, not put in any emails, no paper trails, you're not the only one that's told me that. I mean, I had a professor that taught Homeland Security, one of my professors, who's a great guy. He explained how in the years of President Barack Obama, he would work at the fusion centers and they would be doing the same thing. They would say, do not put this in writing. And the question is, why don't they want it in writing?
Because it's discoverable either in the legal process or through FOIA. If it doesn't exist, you can't FOIA it. You can't bring it out. It doesn't come out in discovery. It doesn't come out in trial. So the security division is one of those, kind of like the Animal House, like double secret probation. It's one of those double secret organizations that is impenetrable by congressional oversight. And even within the Bureau, I saw it even at the field office level. The security division is they're the Praetorian Guard. So SecD, as it's referred to throughout the Bureau, short for Security Division, is the group that's responsible for maintaining the, I guess, not just the security division, clearances and things of that nature, but the ideological purity of the organization. Because you have the HR process, which is one element of it. You have the promotion process, which is another element, which I think hopefully we can get a chance to talk to. And then you have the security division, which is the fail-safe. So if you have people that are migrating their way through the system, say Bob Mueller era, that are moving up into the GS 14, 15 senior executive route, if you cannot eliminate them through, obviously you can't eliminate them through the hiring process they're already in. The promotion process, there are some pretty good filters there in keeping people who are not ideologically suited for higher office or higher position. Security division is the last weapon of choice. You can take them out through the security process. And as we see that is being released, especially with people like Marcus Allen and some others, Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle, it's invulnerable. If you need to take someone out, SecD is the tool that you're going to use to do it.
Yeah, because if you can't get a security clearance, then technically you can't really perform any functions. You can't work. And you just brought up Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend and Marcus Allen, and their security clearances was suspended. And even though their clearances were suspended, they weren't fired. It's not like they were relieved of command. So they were in this limbo where they can't go really work anywhere else. They're not getting paid because they're suspended because their clearance is suspended. And so it's used as a weapon against those that dissent from FBI, from the senior leadership, from those that will criticize FBI policy and the agendas.
It's a powerful weapon. Not only are they not getting paid, the contract that they sign when they come aboard, the paperwork that they sign, they cannot seek outside employment either. So all the people that you just mentioned were without income. Garrett O'Boyle is still unable to legally earn an income. He has to depend on his wife to support the family. And how many middle-class households, let's just say percentage-wise, are almost entirely dependent on a two-income revenue stream to support
in 2024, it's a hell of a lot, especially with inflation.
Right. So it is an extremely effective weapon to keep people in line. And I still have friends at the Bureau, some of whom have worked with the group that I'm affiliated with, the Suspendables, to push information out so that it makes its way out into the press that are just terrified. Like they won't even send a document to the printer because SecD will review material that they suspect of individuals that that are being sent to the printer, and then you sent this document to the printer, and whoa, look at that, it's on Just the News, and they can open up an investigation, and the threshold, the bar to get over for an internal investigation is not a legal threshold. It's not a preponderance of evidence. It's just, it can be, well, we don't like you.
I used to work on the national security background investigations. Now, when I was doing it, I believe it was every 5 years you had to go for a reinvestigation. Now it's every 3 years you have to go for a reinvestigation to make sure that you keep your security clearance. And I want to talk to you about that when we get back from a quick break. So everyone hang tight. We'll be right back. Are you prepared for the unexpected? As a former emergency manager, being prepared is not a choice, it's a necessity, and that's where the wellness company comes in. Imagine having the peace of mind that you're equipped to handle any medical crisis, from tick bites to the latest pandemic. The wellness company's medical emergency kit is your lifeline, packed with essential medications like ivermectin, emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and more. This kit is your ultimate preparedness solution. The wellness company's team of renowned medical professionals, including Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. James Thorpe, Dr. Harvey Risch, Dr. Drew Pinsky, and more. They are truth-seeking doctors, and they have designed a kit that sets the gold standard for safety and prevention. Don't wait for the next crisis to strike. Visit twc.health/PAS and use promo code PAS for an exclusive 10% discount just for being a listener of this show. Prepare today, rest easy tomorrow. Use code PAS at checkout. Welcome back, everyone. So when I was doing security clearances, I never did it for the FBI. The FBI did their own in-house. I did it for OPM, which then morphed into the National Background Investigation Bureau, which then morphed into the Office of Counterintelligence and Terrorism. But when I was doing it, we didn't go into social media profiles and see what anyone was doing outside of that. Their personal opinions were their own. It didn't matter to us. Now, I'm not a fan of social media. The only reason I do social media is because of this podcast. I do have to draw in listeners somehow, so I have to use social media, but I don't do anything personal on it. Mine's all politics, but at the same time, I'm a tenured professor, so I'm protected. I could speak on the outside freely. It can't be targeted. I don't speak for the college or anything like that. My question to you is, do you know if the FBI is monitoring social media accounts for all their agents and what the rules are there?
Not monitoring it. I would say it's on an as-needed basis. I mean, they can go as far, because, again, you don't need predication. They can go as far as setting up a geofence, setting up alerts for any kind of social media post. So, as I'm fond of saying, it's prison talk, and I don't mean to sound, crass, but, everybody can get got. And if the Bureau wants to get you, they're going to get you. There's nothing that you can do about it.
Now, what's the justification? We're going after conservatives. How are they doing it, right? I mean, because even though someone expresses conservative ideology, if you try and get rid of them because of conservative ideology, there may be a lawsuit coming down the pike, but they're doing it in a different way. So how are they doing it?
So I'll try to do this as quickly as possible so that your listeners' eyes don't glaze over. But it starts with the hiring process. And that's why I went to the FBI Academy in 2016, because I was familiar with the hiring process. I was familiar with the promotion process. I wanted to see the training process and how this works. And, DEI was very much in evidence when I was at the FBI Academy. So it starts with the hiring process. You go to the top tier schools, the Ivy League schools, the, adjacent schools to the Ivy Leagues, and you recruit people who already are starting out from ideological bent. The intelligence cadre is the worst. The agent cadre is a little tougher to dilute the talent pool, because you're still getting, not a lot, but you're still getting, former law enforcement, some former military, but ideally they want the political science majors, the criminal science majors out of the top tier schools. So it starts with the hiring process. And then there's the promotion process. After 9/11, when the intelligence branch was created, the FBI created this process called threat response prioritization, and TRP. And so they created a whole mechanism where people get promoted through process, not through results. So the filtering process starts at the very beginning, at the hiring process, at the academy, and then the way the FBI conducts business through the TRP process or program. And so you're already focusing on individuals who are mediocre, ideologically bent, who know how to check those boxes for TRP, and they move up through the ranks. Now, when you want to go to, say, from GS 14 to 15, there's actually an interview process where you have to take an online test, and you get down to Quantico and you get interviewed with gatekeepers. That's plain and simple. That's who they are. These are people that are going to come up, well, you didn't brief well, or your PowerPoint wasn't good, or your analysis was flawed. Totally subjective. So you put people in those positions that act as human filters to keep people from moving up into those senior positions. So there's a whole mechanism from beginning to end. The TRP process is managed by human resources, not any one of the, national security programs or criminal programs. Is managed by human resources. So the whole thing is politicized from hiring through promotion.
And now let's say you have a conservative that's an FBI agent, expresses conservative opinions online, maybe supporting the former president of the United States. Does the MAGA threat tags have anything to do with this process? We know that several months ago that the FBI warned about Trump supporters potentially being domestic terrorists, and that there's going to be a MAGA threat tag. So does that have anything to do with conservatives that work at the FBI?
Yes, the system of record is called Sentinel, and you will get fired real quick, or at least lose your clearance, should you be found searching your own name in Sentinel. So SecD could open up an internal investigation on you under the MAGA threat tag, and say you go in and see your boss, and because this has happened to me, I got called under the carpet because I dared call COVID-19 the Wuhan virus. And I said, well, how is this any different than Ebola or West Nile? It's just
Lyme disease.
It's just named after, exactly. It's just named after geography. So they do look at this. This came to my supervisor's attention through a social media exchange that I had, and they refuse to tell you how they know, because he wasn't on my social media feed. I'm not on his social media feed. Somebody else was. So there is a rat out your colleague mentality. So somebody on my social media feed made my boss aware of it. I'll give you another example. Another friend of mine, a supervisory special agent. All this individual did was simply like a posting that was on LinkedIn. Frank Fugazi, Mr. 888 or 8 whatever, called the SAC, the special agent in charge, Joe Bonavolanta, and complained about this individual's. All he did was like a posting on LinkedIn, not exactly a bastion of right-wing posting. So there is also this culture of bringing to the attention of your supervisor, like, hey, I'm with you. Look what this guy's doing.
Yeah, and it creates that culture of distrust, right? I mean, if I'm going to work for an agency and I have to worry that, hey, my coworkers are going to sit there and rat me out, God forbid I say anything that goes against the government narrative, well, then I'm not going to trust them. They're not going to trust me. And no agency can survive if its members don't trust each other. I mean, it's just not going to function properly. And that's where we're at now, right?
Yeah, this started under Obama to some extent with DOD. Reservists were making postings on Facebook criticizing the administration, which, unless you're under orders, you're not under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And we saw people within the unit, instead of maybe addressing that person individual on a one-on-one basis, saying, hey, you might want to pull this down, ratting them out to their chains of command. So this is something that is what used to be anathema to the American public of ratting out. And this, I think this groundwork was laid after 9/11. See something, say something. And we now have this mentality. We saw it after the January 6th incident, where people were sending into WFO Washington Field Office, FBI headquarters, the Boston office, pictures of their neighbors' pickup trucks with, don't tread on me stickers or NRA stickers.
Betsy Ross flag.
Yeah, exactly. Somehow a significant portion of the American population has fallen into that, that communist, Maoist kind of mentality of ratting out people who used to be their neighbors, and now somehow they see as a threat.
To me, it's a failed education system where, we used to teach about the limited government and the principles of the founding fathers that they laid out to always be suspicious. And then over the years, the last 25 years, it's morphed into obey and comply when it comes to government, trust the government. I mean, when you look at the coronavirus, for instance, you had the idiot mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, creating a number for people to call if someone's not wearing their mask. You had the governor of Washington state that if someone has more than five or six people in their home, that the neighbors should report them to the police. You had the Vermont governor, a Republican governor, who ordered the schools after Thanksgiving break to question the students about what they did during the coronavirus and how many people were in their homes. So you see the snitch approach that they take. And it really is troubling when we look at it because it's all laid out in the national strategy. I still can't believe no one really talks about this document. But in Pillar 2, it explains specifically that they want to recruit individuals in the communities to turn against each other, almost like a Saddam Hussein's Iraq. And we're now seeing it in real time. Let's go into traditional Catholic churches and recruit members to serve as informants for us if they go against government. It really is crazy. How do we rein this in?
I don't know that it can be. I don't know that it can be reined in through elections. We're talking about a change that occurred in the American psyche on September 12th, 2001. So this has been building for nearly a quarter of a century. That's a long time. It's going to take a long time to unpack this. Now, we saw in countries like Poland and Germany where, they were able to, drive back that cancer that is communism and this mentality of ratting on fellow citizens. I think it can be done, but it takes time. Disbanding a domestic intelligence agency, namely the FBI, because that's what they've become, would be a good step in the right direction. But even as I'm driving down the interstate here in the Democratic Socialist People's Republic of Massachusetts, I see signs saying if you report suspicious activity here, and these are signs on the highway and stuff. So they keep on going with this messaging of see something, say something, report suspicious activity. They keep on reinforcing that message. So it's not dying out. If anything, it's getting reinforced. And we saw it, go on steroids after January 6th. So
yeah, just look at the DOD and what Lloyd Austin did with the military. Even though that all these extremists existed in our military, now they did an investigation. Turns out there's actually very few extremists in the military, and the extremists they did find didn't fall into the whole right-wing narrative that they put out.
I spent 26 years in uniform, 13 active duty Marine Corps, and another 13 as a Navy reservist post 9/11, multiple deployments in both branches. I mean, there are a few, unpleasant people no matter where you go, but by and large, it didn't exist. Even into the 2000s. I don't know where they're getting this. They're making it up out of whole cloth.
It's frightening, to say the least. Now, George, I want to switch gears. I want to talk about the president a little bit. We're going to take a quick break, so everyone hang tight. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. So, George, we have a president of these United States, obvious cognitive decline. It's clear he's no longer really functional. He's not the one that's actually making the decisions. He can't perform the duties of the presidency, despite what his Democratic handlers say. With your background and experience in the intelligence community, I want to put yourselves in the shoes of our adversaries. China, Russia, Iran. Put yourselves, what are their intelligence communities looking at? What would be going through your mind as you watch this president stumble and stammer and can't perform the functions of the presidency?
So, as you know, Nick, and as all your students know, the role of the commander in chief as it relates to the military. So I forget how many you probably know. I think we have like 15 combatant commands, CENTCOM, SOUTHCOM, SOCOM, STRATCOM, NORTHCOM, PACOM, UCOM, all those combatant commands. They're only functional for about 24 hours should something pop up in their theater of operations. Beyond that, you have to get the National Command Authority involved, and the commander-in-chief starts making decisions on how we're going to respond to whatever pops up. So this is a really great opportunity for the countries that hate us. So Iran, Russia, China, the fat kid in North Korea, all those countries that want to kick something off have a golden opportunity here, because if they can just make it through the first 24 hours, there's nobody answering the phone at the White House. There is no commander in chief. Apparently, has been told to us through the White House themselves, that it's kind of like management by committee. And anybody who's ever spent any time in uniform, or even a good executive in a company, knows that where the buck stops, it stops with one individual. And that person doesn't exist for our country right now. And regardless of where one sits on the political spectrum, from a national security standpoint, we're extremely vulnerable right now.
Yeah, and again, to me, that's terrifying because we are vulnerable and we're going to get more vulnerable. It's not like President Biden's going to get any better. I mean, when you're at his age with the condition he has, every day is going to be usually worse than the day before. I mean, that's just natural evolution of what takes place. And so, what type of intelligence operations might these countries be engaged in where they're going to push the boundaries? I mean, if you look at it, for a lot of them, this is the moment to push the boundaries and what intel are they trying to glean from the United States?
I don't know that they need to glean any more intel. I think they have enough information that if they want to act, they can act. You know, we've demonstrated it, and it made a huge impression on Putin. But the decapitation strike, where you take out elements of the leadership of a country's ability to respond. You've got thousands of Chinese who have come across the border. I'm sure a good percentage of whom are intelligence operatives or some sort of special operations types. You have people that have come over from the IRGC, Iranian Republican Guard Corps, MOIS, Ministry of Intelligence Services, so Venezuela. So there are a number of elements here within the United States that could conduct a decapitation strike. So from an intelligence standpoint, as far as their collection, I think they have enough. I think they have to reach a decision whether or not is it in their best interest to strike now or to wait later on to see how things play out. But know this, if you look at the world leaders that are meeting with one another, so Kim Jong-un, Putin, Xi, unlike World War II, where the Axis acted independently, these countries that want to take us down are acting in concert with one another. And that's a real problem, because if something kicks off in Europe, China's not going to sit back and watch from the sideline, nor is North Korea going to sit and watch from the sideline. So we're talking about getting beyond that 24-hour window. Things would go very hot very quickly in multiple theaters of operation. And when you have multiple combatant commands involved in kinetic operations, that's where you desperately need a commander-in-chief.
Now, we have seen these countries get certainly more aggressive. They've certainly gotten more hostile towards the United States. But if you take a country like China, I mean, China hasn't really pulled the trigger like they can do. Do you think that the only thing that really has held them back so far? Well, two things. The first being that, like the American people, we have no idea who's making the decisions in the White House. We have no idea who are the power brokers. What's this committee like? Is it a committee or is it one person making the decisions? And so they're trying to be careful because they don't know who they're dealing with either. And the second reason, do you think they're hesitating, is because we are having a presidential election in the next 4 months. And if they do something prior to that and President Trump comes into office, they're going to be dealing with a whole different response than they would under the Biden administration.
Yeah, why not? I don't think there's any downside risk to taking a wait and see approach for a few months. The sea state in the Straits of Taiwan was ideal through March and April. That has changed. It doesn't mean they still can't conduct cross-strait operations. So a wait and see approach would be very pragmatic on their part. If the Chinese have shown us anything, it's that they're very patient. I'm finishing up Peter Schweiker's book, Blood Money, and I forget the rest of it. But the Chinese have integrated themselves into every aspect of our society. Like a cheap sweater, they could pull on a couple threads and cause the fabric of our society to come unraveled very quickly, which would then make things much easier for them.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. We're our own worst enemy. All the self-inflicted wounds, not just the United States. I'm talking about the entire Western world. Our adversaries don't have to fire a shot because we're doing a good job at destroying ourselves. That's for sure. George, I always appreciate your insight, you coming on the program, talk to the audience. I want to thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me, Nick.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, visit us at PASreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at P.A.S. Report.